Hi, I'm Roland, and I am here today to talk to you about my writing. And I come up with ideas and I put stuff down and I share it in various places. And I started working on a story recently. This is the first attempt at ever writing a short story, maybe serial, maybe serial novel, who knows. But I got the first section. I wouldn't necessarily call it a full chapter, but it's close to a full chapter. And I just wanted to read it to you because I'll be reading off of a prompter that I've not used before. This will be maybe not a whole lot of eye contact, but I'm going to get through it. The book that I'm trying to write, and that hopefully will come out as an actual book, is called The Death Debt. And Lord knows when it'll all be done, but this is the first chapter. One act of being a carefree child, living your best life with your friends, has a way of turning you down a different path. I was 10, riding my bike in our gated middle-class neighborhood. Some friends and I were excited about a piece of wood that we had found. John had the crazy idea to stack some brick and the shoddy pieces of plywood to make a ramp. We were having a blast. Cars would drive down the road, we'd scream, "Time out!" shifting everything to the side of the road, then stacking the ramp back up. We measured the distance of our jumps. Soon, we were jumping a whole 14 inches. It felt like being a superhero. Nothing could stop us. After one car passed, John grabbed a large rock, the size of his head. He struggled to carry it, though his arms were going to pull straight out of the sockets. John's efforts increased the size of the ramp. It looks really steep now. Ben swore up and down that if someone went fast enough, they could launch into space. No one would try. I wanted to risk it. Go into space? Probably not. Feel the wind in my face and have bragging rights? Absolutely. I love the feeling of being off the ground longer than expected. For added flair, I got a long run up, backing up into a driveway with a slope. I took the extra speed towards the ramp and flew. I landed. Holy moly, I landed. I turned my head to see how far I'd made it. When the group screamed, "Time out!" Before I turned my head back to the front, I collided with a delivery truck. When I opened my eyes, my mother was there, crying. No, sobbing. The recovery driver in her fancy uniform said, "It's breathing. We're gonna load it up now." She shot a look of condolences to my mother as they moved me to the rolling bed and into the recovery van. I never saw any of them again. The hum of the recovery van, a low metallic thrum, was the first thing I registered. It vibrated through the cold steel of the gurney, a constant unsettling pulse. My head throbbed, a dull, insistent ache that mirrored the rhythmic jolting of the vehicle. I tried to move, to lift a hand, but my limbs felt heavy, unresponsive. A strange leaden weight held me down. The world swam into focus, blurry and distorted, the sterile white walls of the van, a stark contrast to the vibrant greens and blues of my last memory. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through the fog of disorientation. Where was I? What had happened? The last thing I remembered was the ramp, the rush of adrenaline, the sickening crunch of impact. Then, nothing. The van shuddered to a halt, the engine cutting out with a sigh. The rear door swung open, revealing a stark gray landscape. No trees, no houses, just endless expanse of concrete and metal. The air was thick with an acrid smell of disinfectant and something else, something that made my stomach churn. I was wheeled out, strapped tightly to the gurney, its wheels vibrating against the rough concrete. The light was harsh, blinding, and I squinted, trying to make sense of my surroundings. We stopped at an entrance to a massive monolithic structure. Its surfaces, a seamless expanse of dull metal. There were no windows, no doors, just a single yawning opening that seemed to swallow the gurney whole. A sense of dread, cold and visceral, gripped me. This wasn't a hospital. This was something else entirely. I was wheeled into the opening, the darkness closing around me, the hum of machinery filled the air, a constant, low drone that vibrated through my bones. The gurney moved along a track, the rhythmic clanking echoing in the vast cavernous space. Lights flickered on, harsh and unforgiving, revealing a scene that made my blood run cold. Rows upon rows of gurneys lined the walls, each occupied by crying dead. Some were young, their skin still flushed with the remnants of life. Others were gaunt, their skin loose over skeletal frames, their eyes sunken and hollow. A heavy, oppressive silence hung in the air, broken only by the mechanical hum of the facility and the whimpers of the dead. This was a dead disposal center. I was wheeled into a large, brightly lit chamber. Figures in white coats moved with clinical efficiency, their faces devoid of emotion. They were sorting, classifying, and processing. I saw a body being tagged, a barcode slapped onto its forehead. Another was being scanned, the machine emitting a high-pitched whine. I was next. A figure in a white coat approached, their face obscured by a surgical mask. They scanned my wrist, the machine beeping softly. They paused, their eyes widening slightly. Subject 47B25. They announced, their voice flat and emotionless. Cause of death, traumatic impact. Resuscitation, successful. Resuscitation? I was dead? The realization hit me like a physical blow, a wave of nausea washing over me. I tried to speak, to protest, but my voice was a weak, rasping whisper. The figure ignored me. Their attention focused on the screen in front of them. Status? Citizen, they continued. Property? Unclaimed. Initiate intake process. I was wheeled into another chamber, this one even colder and more uncomfortable than the last. The air was thick with the smell of sweat and something else, something faintly sweet and sickly. I was strapped to a table, my limbs restrained, a machine whirred to life, its mechanical arm extended towards me. A needle plunged into my arm, a sharp, stinging pain. A large chip had been inserted into my bicep muscle. I imagined feeling the scrape of the needle slides across my bone. My vision blurred from the pain, the world fading into a swirling vortex of darkness. The last thing I heard was the mechanical voice of the machine, its tone flat and emotionless. Intake process initiated. Subject 47B25. Status, deceased. Property, unitary executive. Another one, a voice says, its tone flat and emotionless. Young? Status? Another voice asked. Deceased, the first voice replied. Property of the unitary executive. I was wheeled away from the room. The world swam blurry and distorted. I was dead. The intake process was brutal and efficient. I was stripped, washed, scanned, tagged. My body was poked, prodded, examined. My memories, my thoughts, my very essence were cataloged, digitized, stored for future leverage. I was no longer a person. I was a product, a commodity, a resource. I was assigned a unit, a small cramped cell in the depths of the facility. The walls were cold and damp, the air thick with the smell of disinfectant and something else, something faintly metallic. The only furniture was a metal cot, a bucket, and a small flickering light. I was given a uniform, a gray shapeless garment that hung loosely on my frame. I was given a number, 47B25, etched into a metal tag that hung around my neck like an old military tag. No, more like a pet tag. I was given a new purpose, assigned to the work detail, a group of the newly dead tasked with maintaining the facility. We cleaned, we sorted, we processed. We moved with mechanical efficiency. We struggled to be devoid of emotion, our eyes blank and lifeless. At night, there were sobs. We were the dead, the property of the unitary executive, or whoever they gave us to. We were the workforce, the resources, the expendable. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Time lost all meaning in the unchanging environment of the facility. We were cogs in the machine. We started to long for the days when we were loaned out, and we even hoped we would be sold to earn money for the unitary executive. All we wanted to do was experience some semblance of life. 10 years or more passed. A newly dead was brought into the facility. She was different, more vibrant, more alive. Her eyes held a spark of defiance, a flicker of resistance. She whispered at night with an odd accent of a world outside the unitary, a world where the dead were not dead, where the living were not masters. We spoke of the rebellion, of freedom, of hope. 98 Charlie 36. Words ignited something within me, a flicker of memory, a spark of humanity. I remembered my life before the facility, my friends, my family, my dreams. Memories of the ramp, the rush of adrenaline, the sickening crunch of impact. I am alive, and this death is a lie. 98 spoke of a hidden network, a resistance movement, a group of the living and the dead who were fighting against the unitary executive. She spoke of a chance to be human again. She planned, we schemed, we prepared. We learned the layout of the facilities, the routines of the guards, the weaknesses in the system. We forged alliances with other work details, with the cleaners, with the sorters, with the processors. We were the dead, but we were not defeated. We were the new resistance. The path back to life began with a whisper, a subtle act of defiance, a refusal to comply. We slowed our work, we sabotaged the machines, we spread messages of hope and resistance. We had no death debt. We were alive. We were free. Life, or I suppose death, has a way of turning you into a different direction than you had planned. It's what you do with that life or rebirth that can shape the future for everyone. It's difficult to reflect how we got here or how our world led to this place. I find it hard to understand how we slipped past being a society that wanted the goodness of everyone. Someone who created a TV show like Star Trek where we strove for the betterment of all humans, and somehow we landed in this place. It was shortly after a presidential election when society seemed to rapidly collapse in the United States of America. We lost all of our liberties and personal authority, the ability to decide what we were doing. There was an income crash. We needed a way to be able to manufacture and create products for the American people. We had broken most ties with foreign nations, and now we needed to find a way to support ourselves. The unitary executive determined that the best way was to adjust the laws so that those people who passed away could be put to work. It sounds confusing when you think about it, but it was born out of drug use and the promise to stop drug use. The promise to save lives from the epidemic, and they created death debt, the death that works by enslaving any person who is resuscitated. The idea was that if a drug user passed through the use of some sort of narcotic and a police officer or an emergency worker arrived on the scene to save them when their heart wasn't beating, and then they were then revived with, let's say, Narcan or something of the sort, they woke up into slavery. They were congratulated for surviving and then taken to a facility and would be eventually put to work. The drug problem quickly evaporated in America. The unitary executive decided we needed more workers. He expanded the death debt. The deaths that now took on other individuals who passed in motorcycle accidents, automobile accidents, random heart attack when you're 30, a child's accident when they're 15. Nearly no one escapes the death debt. And that's all I've written so far. That second part was a little bit difficult because it's not been edited at all. I hope you enjoyed what you heard. If you did enjoy, like, subscribe, and you can also subscribe to my Substack, which is a free Substack, and there's a link down below. Thank you.